Hey guys, it's David Konikoff here, and I want you to watch this clip of this leftist ask Douglas Murray. A lot of people don't want to support Israel because they're liberal, and they want to be in with the liberal crowd. And Douglas Murray clears that up and says, just tell the truth. Check it out.
It's difficult because there is a huge range of beliefs, and I have Jewish friends of mine who go on the Saturday marches.
Really?
It's awful.
Wow.
And they're not
There's
friends.
a case for a
Unfortunately,
psychiatrist.
unfortunately, they're probably not my friends anymore.
Yeah.
But there is a minority of people Jewish people who go on the marches on a Saturday going, no, it's amazing, we're marching for the poor people in Gaza, and you have that side of things. It sort of goes on to a question that I want to ask you, which lots of people have asked me to ask you, which is there is, the Jewish community is a real mix of political beliefs, and there is a large group of people who would call themselves far more to the left. They would be the Guardian readers. They would that side of people, and they have said to me, I love Douglas. I love what he says, but he's a bit right wing. And they say, how do I balance my political beliefs with what he's saying and his more right-wing beliefs, and they're struggling with that?
I tell you, I've got one response. And how about asking them to tell the truth? How about urging them to orient their life not by a boring political seesaw game that no one cares about except for themselves? And instead of orienting themselves by, exactly how can I position myself? No one cares. No one cares.
It's why we love Douglas.
Instead of saying, how will I balance myself to make sure I keep my Guardian reader friends on side, say, how about you just orient yourself towards the truth?
Yeah.
If something exists in front of you, when you come across a...
All right, so hold on. She's saying, these people, they basically don't want to associate with Douglas. They think that he's telling the truth, but he's too right-wing for them. It's coming out of the wrong mouth. And Douglas is saying, what? You're saying that you're going to disagree with a point of view simply because it's coming from the wrong person? Unbelievable. Let's continue.
Mental blockage like this. You can keep hitting your head against the wall, or you can realize that you've got to do something else. And the something else in this case is to look frankly at what is actually happening. Mm-hmm. Also, by the way, it's a serious moral defect in a person to believe that their membership of a political tribe should override anything else. If I don't care whether I'm thought of as right-wing or not, but if somebody said to me, Douglas, I don't agree with you on Ukraine, and, you're likely to tarnish your right-wing credentials, I'd say, so what? So what? What's that got to do with it? I don't care. Kick me out of your boring club. Why would I want to be a member of it anyway?
Yeah.
So let me say, first of all, first I should address the question of the lunatics you mentioned, the sort of the Jews for suicide groups.
Yes.
They're always like this. There's Naturi Carter, of course. This is a joke that may only work with this audience, but there's also, of course, there was Queers for Palestine.
It's the best.
I called recently, and again, this doesn't work with everyone, but not everyone gets the reference. I think you can. I called Queers for Palestine the gay Naturi Carter. They are exactly saying, there's some people who like to die and just struggle madly beforehand. It's just, okay. But then inside from that, I would urge your friends who say this to listen to the testimonies of people from the kibbutz who I've spoken with, who were far to the left of any of the people you're talking about, I can guarantee.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
And, if you go around the sites, they've been cleaned up a lot now. They weren't when I was there, it was pretty fresh. And if you go round, you can literally see peace now stickers on what remains of somebody's fridge. And you can see, I mean, and you speak to the people. I spoke to a man in a hospital in Tel Aviv the other month, in October, November. Very nice man, been in the kibbutz all his life. Total leftist, peace now, activist, believed in peace with the Gaza, lived just by the Gaza in near Oz. And he was in the safe room on the morning of the 7th with his wife and teenage son and daughter. And they shut themselves in the safe room. As you know, the safe rooms didn't lock because nobody expected this to happen. They tried to hold the door closed, and they did for quite a long time. He did for quite a long time. And then the terrorists found the air vent because by then they'd set light to his house, and they were trying to burn them out. And a lot of families had this, and you had to choose whether to burn to death with your family or flee and be shot. And they stayed, and the smoke was getting too much, and they opened the vent. And then the Hamas saw this, and they threw grenades in, and one of the grenades killed his wife. And then they stuck a Kalashnikov through the shutter, and they shot his 14-year-old son through each side of the chest, and he bled out in front of his father and his sister. And his father also lost both his legs. And it was heartbreaking. He described that his son said to him as he was dying, would you bury me with my surfboard? We said, would you bury me with my surfboard? And when the authorities came to ask if he wanted anything from the house that was burnt, he said, only one thing, if you can find my son's surfboard. And he buried him with it. He said to me at the end of our time together, he said, you know, Douglas, I've been a leftist all my life. I want nothing but potato fields from here to the Mediterranean. We can't live with these people. Now, there are hundreds of stories like that. Everyone's heard of the 75-year-old woman who spent her life driving Palestinian children to hospital. I mean, imagine what it's like for the people who, and I've spoken to a lot of them, were so dedicated to the idea of people in Gaza, Palestinians in Gaza, working with them in Israel, getting a better life. Just around the time of the 7th, there was meant to be another increase in the number of workers allowed each day from Gaza into Israel to work. And that was, all the international community were pushing Israel to allow more and more workers in. And I've spoken to a lot of people in the kibbutzes who were friends with these people, were friends with Palestinians, employed Palestinians, worked with Palestinians, tried to do everything they could to make this work. And they discovered that when people came into their communities, they knew exactly where to go.
Exactly.
They knew, for instance, in one of the kibbutz, they knew where the house of the head of security in the kibbutz was, and they went and they shot him and his family, and then they went door to door everywhere else. Yeah. So I'd say to your friends, you know, sleep and dream while you can, because not everyone has that luxury. The people of Near Oz didn't have that luxury. The people of Be'eri didn't have that luxury. The people of kibbutz after kibbutz and town after town. Everybody who went to the Nova party wanted peace. There were young people who wanted to dance and have a good time. And if you'd have said to them, do you dream of a day that you can dance with your Palestinian neighbors? They would have all said yes.
So true.
Absolutely. But you know, and these people could have been your friends and mine, and if this party had been going on in this country, our friends would have been there. So I'd say to your friends, I beg you, have some empathy and understanding for the people who can no longer afford to dream dreams that you dream.
Wow, beautifully put. I honestly think that the host here is living in La La Land to even ask such a question. Your friends are delusional. You know, the idea that they're going to sacrifice their own values in order to be seen as part of a clique. It's the exact same thing as like Chuck Schumer. It's an as a Jew. You know, I'm a Jew as long as it sort of fits into the narrative. You know, as long as we're not being hated, I'm a Jew. And then second that it looks like it's not going to be so good to be a Jew, I'll just shift my identity. For more, subscribe to the channel. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. Thank you, and have a good one.